sultry, soft voice. Um, while we're waiting for a handful of stragglers to join us, just a quick reminder of some upcoming events. Quickly pop this on the screen. We have the Scotch Malt Whisky Society tastings next week. There are kits available for the virtual. There's also spots left in the in-store as well, both the 6 and 8 p.m. seatings. There's some leftover kits for our undisclosed Orkney tasting, which is in 10 days. I'm going to be co-hosting that from another country, but we won't get into the details on that. Presumably, I'll have a host just in case something goes sideways, but that's a Evan and I chat for later on. Also coming up for those in town, a date with whiskey and chocolate hosted by Harmony. That'll be fun. And if your wife's not in, or a partner, or whomever is not into to whiskey and chocolate, we've also got bubbles and cheese coming up that week on Valentine's Day. Smorgasbord of Signatory, that's it. Tasting is sold well. We made 10 final kits for it. There is also the Daffodil launch. If this sells out, we'll probably add another set. But this is exciting, launching our Sherry Cask 2011 Daffodil there, which is fun. Berry Brothers Lost and Found tasting, a fun random tasting of whiskeys. I mean, we've got stuff that was bottled 10, 12 years ago in this tasting to a Pinot Noir cask Chichibu that is now sold out. So that's going to be a fun lineup. You won't want to miss it. For all the ladies in your life that are fans of whiskey, we have our Lassie's Only Whiskey Festival in support of the Brenda Strafford Heart and Home Network, which is a second stage women's shelter in our area, which we've been supporting now for 7 or 8 years. Great cause. What else? There's the Single Cask Nation KWM cask launch with Joshua Hatton. I couldn't find a good bio photo from Joshua, but I thought this sketch from his website was pretty cool. He does at times have a great fro. I too, and in my younger years, had quite the wild and unruly hair, so respect for that. Redbreast vertical tasting. This is probably going to be poured this week along with Single Cask Nation and some of the others. Luck of the Irish, we should get a photo up for that. Our Irish in-store tasting. And then one of the ones I'm most excited about is this Cairn tasting that James Bourne from Authentic and I are doing with the range of blended malts from the Cairn distillery that Gordon MacPhail built with the money they made from selling Macallan 100 casks of their own whiskey back. There's an add-on option there where you can add on a sample of the 57-year-old. I know it's not inexpensive, but kind of cool to be able to do that for those who are interested. But yeah, that's what's coming down the pipeline in the months ahead. Probably have some other new tastings to fill you in on just before and just after Easter. But Evan, anything else we should tell people about before we get rolling here?
I think that about covers it.
Okay.
Looking forward to this tasting. This is about 8 times more at Chiro's malt than I've ever had before. So it's all new to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the most Chichibu I've had in a single tasting as well. I think it's fair to say that there's not often been uh, the opportunity to sample through such a range of Chichibu. Uh, Interestingly, this is going back to really the early 2010s.
Mhm.
Kensington Wine Market for a while regularly had Chichibu whiskey available for sale in the store. And the reason for that was that we were one of the few retailers, probably in Canada at that time, that actually had a sense of how cool it was, how interesting it was, and why people might want to try it. And the sorry, I'm just downloading the thing. Uh, the unfortunate thing is just that the demand for it caught on globally. It then became virtually impossible to get. But part of that is understanding how small the distillery is and how small the production is. And even their new distillery, which is only 5 times the size of the prior distillery, it's crucial to know that it's still a tiny distillery in the grand scheme of things. And when you consider the Japanese market alone, not even thinking about exports, the Japanese market alone is 125 odd million people. And even if only one out of 1,000 of those might be interested in whiskey and therefore maybe some Chichibu, uh, it doesn't take very many of them before that stock disappears. One of the things I was reading about in Malt Whiskey Yearbook was about a recent release they did of their floor malted, and it was one of the oldest Chichibus they've released. It was a blend of 9 to 15-year-old whiskeys, and it was a global release in 2024, the second half of 2024, of just 12,000 bottles. Now, again, think about the size of the population in Japan. They're trying to export some of this to Europe, some of it to the UK, Canada. Like 12,000 bottles doesn't go very far.
Mhm.
And essentially, I think what you have in Chichibu, especially, maybe not Ichiro's malts, because there's two different things for us to talk about there. They're all under the umbrella of Ichiro's malts, but some of them are whiskeys he's made with components he's sourced as well as his own, and others are made just with his own distillate. And when you're looking at his distillery and the distillate he produces, I think it's fair to say it's probably the only whiskey out there that's as rare as Springbank and as hard to get as
Mhm.
Springbank, and might even be harder to get than Springbank in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I was seeing from what I saw online, Chichibu one, I think the guesstimates are around like 50 to 60,000 liters a year, which is tiny, tiny.
Yeah,
And then like that's like maybe around Daphne levels. And then Chichibu 2 is perhaps 300,000 liters a year or
yeah.
350,000.
Yeah. So again, very small. There's just not a lot there. And I think that's what people need to understand is just how tiny effectively this distillery is.
Hmm.
Now, I'm just noticing here some of the stuff I thought I'd downloaded doesn't look like it downloaded. But Evan, I think you said we might have some of this on the website and we probably should get going. I know I've got
Yeah,
bare minimum notes from the Malt Messenger from way back when. We're starting off with the Mizunara wood.
yeah,
Uh,
I'll share that.
and the Mizunara wood is a marriage of Chichibu and Hanyu. So without going into too much of the story right off the bat, Hanyu is the distillery that that Ichiro's grandfather owned. It closed, but he still had stock left over from that distillery. So he opened Chichibu to restore his family's legacy in the Japanese whiskey industry. And a lot of the releases he does are a marriage of Hanyu and Chichibu. So this one in Double Distillers, the third whiskey we're going to go through, are a marriage of those two different distilleries. Um, so on the nose, Ms. Narwood. And I guess the other thing to talk here about Ms. Narwood, what is Ms. Narwood? Ms. Narwood is a species of Japanese oak from the far north island of Hokkaido. I suppose it's not the furthest north. I think there might be a few islands further north than that. But this marriage of Chichibu and Hanyu bottled 46 is finished in Japanese oak. And that Japanese oak actually has a very exotic profile to it. You'll often get notes of kind of plum wine, flowers. Now, the caveat to that is sometimes I believe they do actually season casks of Mizunara wood
Mm.
with Japanese plum wine before they put spirit into it. Not always. But the key thing to note about Mizunara wood is that it's incredibly porous. It's very hard to make casks from. And as a result of this porous nature, the spirit can penetrate much deeper into the wood. So they're able to get some really deep, rich, layered flavors, aromas from it. So Evan, you're, I think, a step ahead of me on the nose. What are you getting there?
Yeah, it's got this really nice sort of bright combination of it does have some plum wine notes for me in there, but it does have some nice oak spices coming in into just a touch of waxiness coming through as well. Um, I think they do at Chichibu, they do both peated and unpeated whiskey, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Um, this is nosing like it's not peated, but it maybe that'll change on the palate.
Hmm. Yeah, sandalwood is one of the other big notes from this, which
Hmm.
even though I don't think a lot of times it's made from sandalwood, makes me think of my 20s when I was buying a lot of IKEA furniture, and some of it was the color was sandalwood, maybe not the actual aroma. Um, but yeah, the nose on this, it's very approachable, very elegant. Now, one of the things to keep in mind with these whiskeys is the climate in Japan matures things much more quickly than it does in Scotland. Huge temperature fluctuations, both seasonally, but also on a daily basis. And the distillery is also up in the mountains to the west of Tokyo, a bit to the north and west of Tokyo. So it's got a climate that's going to really speed up that maturation process compared to what we would traditionally think.
Mm.
How's the palate, Evan?
It's really nice. It's again has those plum notes coming through. Just the wood spice is really mellow. There might be a little bit of like a touch of smokiness in there, but it's probably more toastiness than anything else for me. Um, little bit of a nuttiness and pistachio notes coming through as well.
Yeah, it's to me, it's really spicy. And I actually kind of feel like this is a whiskey that might appeal to your palate even more than mine
Hmm.
because it's got a spiciness that is somewhat reminiscent to me of some bourbons where you get this really kind of sweet but firm wood spices to it.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a really nice combination of that toasty but sweet,
Yeah.
really sweet malt notes coming through, a little bit starchy, but not over the top. Um, Still getting a touch of smokiness in there, but again, more wood driven, I'd say, than anything else.
Yeah. So before we finish on that, David had a good question. What happened to Hanyu? Why did it close? Um, Bankruptcy was part of it. The generational change I haven't mentioned, but I think the biggest concern, the biggest cause was the 1990s was a really tough time for Japan economically.
Hmm.
They were in the midst of stagflation, and in fact, I think that continued well into the 2000s. So the economy was just not growing. People didn't have a lot of spending money. What little they had, was worth less as time went on. And the Japanese industry really struggled and suffered it. It wasn't exporting. I think that's the other thing is that Japanese whiskey was made primarily by Nikka and Suntory, with the latter being the biggest by far of the players. And almost all of the consumption was local. Very little of it was leaving Japan. It was all being consumed locally. And so the big players, including Nika and Suntory, really ramped production down in the 90s. And it wasn't really until the mid to late 2000s that they started to increase production again. And you think about the timelines for things like some of the whiskeys that people loved, like Yamazaki 18, Yoichi
Hmm.
15. If you only started really cranking up production around 2010, it's only now that those things are going to start reaching those levels of maturity. They just didn't have stock. And I think this is something that's a good segue to the next whiskey because the next whiskey is not 100% Japanese. The Winewood that Evan's going to pull up next on the screen, it's got whiskey blended in, I believe, from other countries. And part of the reason for that is that they just simply do not have enough production in Japan to meet demand. Um, one of my pet peeves has been in the last 15 years as everybody's jumped on board with Japanese whiskey is how much of that is actually Japanese as opposed to just stock that they've acquired. And if you're lucky, matured in Japan for a while and then blended, or if you're not, they literally just brought in whiskeys from North America and Europe, blended them, and then bottled them and shipped them back out as a Japanese product. And there is some of that stuff out there today, but there's 100% transparency with this. Like Ichiro, uh, is pretty open. This is a blend of Chichibu, Hanyu, and then single malts from Scotland. And then it's finished in X wine casks from around the world. Uh, if any of you saw the Chichibu Pinot Noir cask, the Berry Brothers one that we put out in our newsletter a week or two ago, um, could be these are New Zealand wine casks. We're not really sure where they're from.
Hmm.
Uh, the one thing I will say about Ichiro-san and what he does at the distillery is everything is about detail. And I think we'll take a pause after the first three whiskeys and look through some photos from my last trip there
Yeah.
because some of this will tell the story of how he approaches whiskey making, which is quite different from what other distilleries do.
Yeah. Yeah, just in reading about sort of like the founding of Chichibu and its relation to the venture whiskey company that he founded, Ichiro, and the downfall of Hanyu and a few other distilleries in Japan. Some of it kind of reminded me of almost like an accelerated version of what we saw with Ireland, where you had this uh, more than just two distilleries operating in Japan for quite a while. And then all of a sudden you had this big downturn that sort of amalgamated, like Suntory and Nika were able to weather the storm essentially, but everybody else got taken out. And we're only starting to see a resurgence, essentially starting with Chichibu opening in 2005. And beyond that, probably other distilleries not coming on until 2012, 2013 that we still haven't even heard about on this side of the world that are
Mhm.
now producing whiskey.
Yeah, we've started to see some of them come through. So on to the winewood. I think it's fair to say I'm often not a fan of wine casks.
Hmm.
And the nose on this for me, it's clean, but at the same time, it's got this sort of
Yep.
musty, rubbery, kind of dirty note to it that I don't love. And I think I find it a lot of times with wine cask matured
I can
whiskey.
see where you're going on that. It does have like a touch of almost goes into vermouth tones and reminds me of, and I get
Mhm.
this a lot on wine casts, like the orange peel rimmed around an old fashioned. In
Mhm.
a way, it's got a touch of that for me going on.
Well, maybe if you're like, I don't know, drinking the vermouth through a rubber catheter that just had some chocolate sauce in it, then maybe I can see where you're going on that.
Yeah,
But I mean, I'm
maybe I
interested to
was.
see what the palate's like because the nose doesn't always tell the whole story. So let's give it a taste.
Mm. Yeah, I'm interested to see what you think on this palate wise. I think the wine does show up on the palate, but it's kept in check more than a lot of wine casks are, I would say.
It it's surprisingly clean. It's quite peppery and earthy, and I think those tannins come through. I think it's well done, but it's not my jam. Um,
Mhm.
and it rarely is. Now, I think the what I would say about this that is quite positive is this doesn't come across as like a wet fill wine cask.
Yeah,
It just like this is red wine. I mean, let's take a stab out there and say it's probably Pinot Noir or something from New Zealand or
it
maybe
seems like it's
Australian
red wine.
Shiraz.
Yeah.
And it's okay, it's good. It's just really not my style.
Yeah, I don't know. After trying the Mizunara wood, it seems like you're putting something lovely into something that it maybe shouldn't be in.
Brennan, I think Brennan and I talked about this, or he mentioned something about this when we bumped into him in Victoria about how he loves the odd catheter tasting note thrown in there for good measure.
Mhm.
The dentist is curious, Evan, why we would even reference tasting through a catheter, but
Yep.
I
Yep.
suppose we'll leave it at that. Um, yeah, I think it's well made for what it is. It's just not my style. These wine casts, I really struggle with them. Uh, and the nose is interesting. I think that that sort of like sour. I know David put note in there. That sour dark fruit note has sort of faded a little bit on there. We'll see how it
Mhm.
goes. Maybe it's going to come around and we'll be wowed by it the second time through. But let's be honest, there's a market for this style of whiskey. There are people that like this style of whiskey.
Mhm.
I just don't think many of them are KWM cast staff members.
Yeah, I would wager that a lot of people that are fans of like specifically Chichibu, it's probably not what they're looking for either. They want that sort of like more naked style, I would
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. Okay, on to double distilleries. To be honest,
Mhm.
I think this is the one I'm the most excited about of the three in this series. So double distilleries is a marriage of Chichibu and Hanyu. mix of Mizunara, sherry, and sherry hogsheads and puncheons and ex-bourbon casks. So really a true marriage bottling here in the sense that they've used different components and tried to blend them skillfully together to come out with something elegant. And I have to say, right off the bat on the nose, to me, this is the most appealing nose. It has some of those plum wine notes from the Mizunara wood, but it's also got this lovely doughy vanilla note, these soft fruit tones to it, and even a little bit like there's almost a faint cheesiness to this one too.
Yeah. I'm getting like a touch of like green apple and golden pear that reminds me of
Mhm.
like specifically of younger Glen Grant
Yeah.
stylistically.
Well, I mean, green Jolly Ranchers for sure for me on the nose.
Yeah.
But yeah, quite fruity, quite exotic, even like a little bit of lychee and
Mhm.
those anise flavored like what would you call them? After dinner mints you get when you go to an Italian restaurant.
Mhm.
Mm.
Well, that's an interesting palette too. It's almost like you're like it's got this starchy crustiness that you kind of bite into before the fruit comes through.
But it's so doughy and fruity. I mean,
Yeah.
that is a soft palate, nice layers of fruit, everything from citrus and orchard to the more exotic tropical tones. And it's
Hmm.
soft. I mean, for me, that's a no-brainer. Like that is the banger out of those three.
Yeah. I quite like the Mizunara wood, but I think this one's a bit more complex.
That's that bourbon tooth coming through, Evan.
Could be.
Could be. All right. So let's quickly go through some photos. While we're doing that, I'll quickly fill you in on a bit of the background. So Chichibu opened. This is the original Chichibu that I'm going to show you, which I have to put up on screen here. Come on. Here we go. In 2008, by Ichiro Akuto, whose grandfather had built the Hanyu distillery. There's this photo of it in the snow in the winter, and there's a photo of it later on. This has actually changed since my first visit there. This is what it looked like when I was there a second time. These are not my photos to start. I don't have the best photos of the outside of the distillery, but the visitor center is this little log building on the left. And let's see what else. And then there's a shot inside the warehouse. So I'm going to switch here and go to my own photos. Now, the first time I visited there was probably 2012 or 2013, something like that. And when we went on this particular trip, when I by we I mean myself and another tourist from Taiwan. I think we were the only two people going through the distillery that day because you kind of had to be in the trade to go. And this is the original one. The first time I visited, though, the whole place was just filled with bottles. You could sample whatever you wanted. They had, old stock there, including some of the old, like
Card series.
the card series bottles, like the gold, like the colored Joker. Like it was just an incredible opportunity to go through there. And literally, he would let you try whatever you wanted. Going into the distillery, this is the tiny mill they use at Chichibu. Again, the scale of that one distillery is not much bigger than Daft Mill if you consider Daft Mill only runs
Sorry, Andrew. I
right
think you may be sharing the application window and it's still on the photo
out
one for us if you need to switch it.
here. You know what? Why don't I exit out of that and go back into um, here? We'll start this now and see if this works better. Thanks for the heads up on that, Evan. So sharing now. All right, there we go. So there's the mill. So as you're saying, Evan, I think that the production of the distillery is what, about 50, 60,000 liters a year, which
Hmm.
if you look at Daft Mill is 20 to 25, but it's only operating, 4 to 5 months of the year. So comparably sized distilleries. Now, did this next one flip over, Evan?
That one looks good. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure they're going through. This is the one funny note about touring Chichibu is you're asked to take your shoes off and the first time I was there we had to put slippers on, but by 2019 when I took this photo, they'd moved on to Crocs. So fancy Crocs for walking around the distillery. If you've been to a distillery in Canada or the US or Scotland, you'll note that, they try to keep them clean, but it's really hard because you're dealing with an agricultural product. The fermentations will often overflow. So the places they struggle to keep them clean. The thing about Chichibu is that it is immaculately clean. Uh, there's the fermentation tanks and the stills in the first distillery. This is Chichibu number one. One of the key things that's important to note about Chichibu that really sets it apart is they don't use Oregon pine or stainless steel washbacks. They use Mizunara washbacks, which are custom made for the distillery. And the reason that Ichiro likes to use these is that it allows the bacteria and the yeast to live in the wood so that even if you rinse the washbacks out and do another run, you've still got residual traces of that bacteria and yeast in the wood. So it creates a kind of a continuity from batch to batch that you won't even get in Oregon pine or Scandinavian larch, which is a much harder wood and more difficult for these things to penetrate into. And what was really revelatory for me when I went there, again, I think the first time was 2013 or 2012, was just the focus on fermentation. And true, there were some distilleries in Scotland that were thinking about this, but most of them really weren't in this stage. And his fermentation times are long. I think the minimum is 96 hours, which is quite a bit longer than, even the average in Scotland or even some of the longer ferments. There are a few distilleries that will go that long. But the reason he does this is because of how crucial that fermentation is to the flavor profile of the spirit that they're looking to create. Uh, so there are a couple more shots of the stills and the washbacks. There's a brand new Mizunara wood washback in there. Like a lot of the distilleries in Scotland, they have this motor on top. There's a blade that runs around inside the top of the washback to try to keep it from overflowing. And we'll probably cut it at a certain point here because I don't think I've edited these out for the best shots. There's probably just 60 to 80 photos from my particular tour of Chichibu on this occasion. So we'll maybe leave those there for now. I think I've got some other photos that I can share that show Chichibu number two, the second distillery, but we'll get to that in a minute. Evan, we're going to move on. Let's go on to the World Blend Limited Edition, Malt and Grain World Blend Limited Edition.
Yeah, well, I'm bringing that up. I gotta say, like, I haven't been to Chichibu, but seeing those photos, it reminds me. I think the only like hyper clean distillery I've been in is Michter's, which had a lot of that sort of like almost like we're doing science feel cleanliness to it.
Yeah, 100%. It's incredible again, just but I mean, I guess there's an element of the Japanese character that comes
Yeah,
through in that. Uh, so the malt and grain is again, this is a product where they're blending whiskeys, not just from Japan, but also from Scotland. I just want to pull this up here. The World Blend, the limited edition. Where is it here? Um, Best limited edition whiskey, blah, 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 blah. These are a minimum of 10 years of age. Chichibu, Hanyu, single malt whiskeys for a different time. Actually, this one actually might be 100% Japanese. I have to correct
cool.
myself on that. I know the regular malt and grain, it is a world blend, but I don't think it says that on this. What does it say on the bottle you're sharing there, Evan? Does it say world blend or not?
Let's see. I think I read somewhere that he does
Yeah,
have,
it says world
uh,
blended.
yeah, he does have access, or he does have some grain whiskey from that is Japanese from a closed distillery now. But
But it does say world blended whiskey on there. So I think like all
yeah,
the other malt and grain releases, it is a global product. I mean, you can tell right off the bat that this is blended. The grain's really quite prominent on the nose.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, is it maybe I'm saying it because it's Japanese whiskey, but yuzu is coming through for me.
yuzu.
It's got the citrusy note.
That yuzu fruit, I think, is a good one. There's something that reminds me, though, of some older Canadian club on there too. And by which I mean
Yeah.
like the 100% corn,
Yeah. Yeah. It's got that sort of like almost this oiliness that comes off.
but also this like almost faintly bitter citrus tone.
Hmm.
But yeah, the yuzu, I can't stop thinking about that now. That's quite a dominant note here for me.
It's a nice palate. The grain really shows off. That creamy, oily character right up front.
Mhm.
Um, lets the soft fruits come through after that. A little bit of wood spice, but not overly spicy on the wood side of things.
So we're at
Um,
48.5 here. You mean
yeah,
it's got a bit of warmth to it, but it's not hot. Um, nice balance, but yeah, really crushable. I mean, this is a dangerously easy drinking whiskey if you had a bottle of this. Be a nice like summer patio sipper.
yeah, that's a pretty killer dram.
Yeah. Juicy, little bit of sweetness there. Again, a little bit of that kind of bitter citrus, like the orange
Yeah,
and grapefruit, that makes me think of Canadian Club. Now, I suppose from a logical perspective, it's probably not likely that Suntory is selling Canadian Club grain to Ichiro. So
mhm.
would have to assume he would be getting, if he had Canadian grain whiskey in this, it would probably not be coming from Canadian Club.
Yeah. It although I mean Canadian Clubs made it at Hiram Walker Distillery, or was at the time, so maybe you got it from them from Pernod
But it's
Ricard.
owned by Suntory, isn't it? The brand?
No, the brand is, but I
Really?
mean you could get that distillate
No.
regardless from.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, but
I,
I quite like this one. It's that fruitiness is nice along with this sort of almost fizzy, sort of like Fresca-esque or 7 Up Sprite-esque finish to it.
mhm. Yeah. Toasty, some nice spice. Again, there's a little cheesiness coming in there.
Yeah,
And that's not really at all surprising to me, given that I would imagine that there's a good chunk of Chichibu in this, and that Chichibu goes through those long fermentations, almost towards lactic fermentations.
it does kind
And
of go into like we just had French toast this morning, and it's like a cinnamon French toast batter that you're about to dip the bread into for me.
oh, and if you make that with sourdough,
Yeah,
okay, well, that's fun. Now, I think a good segue to the next one because this is a malton grain single cask, cask number
yeah.
4992. And let's see
This one
what
I'll
we
have to
know.
check the photo. I'm not sure if this is a correct photo or a previous one because is this the first cask or the second cask that we're on now
No,
of
that
this?
that does look like the right one.
Okay.
I'm just confirming against the newsletter from before Christmas. So this is cask number, yeah, 4992. It's bottled at 60%. And
Oh,
this
so
single
this is
cask,
slightly different. Yeah.
yeah, is this is what they say, a curated blend of world malt and grain whiskeys from Scotland, Ireland, Canada, the US, and Japan. A minimum of 10 years old when blended. After blending, they were aged in a third fill bourbon cask for an additional 10 years in Japan's accelerated aging climate, thus making this whiskey over 20 years of age. So that's cool. I mean, the youngest component in this particular single cask of the world blend is 20 years of age. And for ABV here, we've got 60%. I think that's the other thing about Japan is that much like the US, the ABV can go up over time. And
Yeah.
because it gets hot and dry, and therefore we've got something that's probably been, I would imagine, diluted down to 60% before bottling.
So versus the last one, I think the nose has quite a few similarities to it, even at the higher strength, but the grain notes are much more pronounced for me. It kind of goes into Cameron Bridge territory for single grains for
Mm.
me.
Well, I think my experience of it is a little different. I'm going to say it's going into all kinds of like exotic teas, and
Cool.
like the tea notes to me in this one are off the charts.
Very
Now,
cool.
thankfully, I don't think Chat Jeff PT is on tonight's tasting because if he was, he would ask me to be more specific about the type of teas that I'm smelling. And I'm not a tea connoisseur. It's not something I will drink it from time to time. He once gave us both a care package of
Yeah.
exotic teas.
With a PDF file printed out of his history of tea making, which was fantastic, but also way over my head. Unfortunately, I don't think any of that information stuck.
I'm ashamed to admit I don't think I ever even opened the PDF. So
Yeah, this has I think you mentioned lychee in a past one. It's got that overripe bananas
yeah,
is like a Chichibu note that I've heard bantered around. It's got a touch of that
yeah,
as well, but some crazy cool fruit notes coming through. I still get that big grain, some wood, more
yeah.
prominent wood spice than the last one as well.
The nose and palate have this lovely ginger and chocolate note. It reminds me of the Fortnum and Mason chocolate covered candied ginger biscuits that they sell in these beautiful tins. And yeah, the fruit again, quite doughy, reminiscent of that double distilleries. It's got that doughy, fleshy, soft fruit profile. And the
That's
spice,
have you done palate?
yeah,
It's again, I'm getting the grain side of things, not in like an overly aggressive way, but I'm getting that sort of mint menthol that you get in a lot of grain whiskey notes to it. A little bit cooling on the finish there, but that touch of like sour, like tart yuzu again. But yeah, some fantastic fruit notes on here.
um, yeah, I agree. And I think this is another whiskey that's right up your wheelhouse
Yeah,
because it's so spicy on the palate, but in a really elegant way.
yeah.
It reminds me of some of the best bourbons I've had, the best old bourbons, which
Hmm.
I realize I normally would say old bourbon is an oxymoron. Like
Yeah,
they're they're too woody. There's no such thing as a good old bourbon. But there have been some good ones over the years that had some age behind them
yeah.
where the spices are there, but they're not completely dominant. But there's this
Mm.
really nice oxidized spice profile on there.
Yeah, it's that's a fun whiskey.
Hmm. Yeah, it's big. It's big but elegant. Man,
Yeah, definitely seems to be going sort of corn spirit driven when it comes to the
yeah,
grain for me.
I I think this is like the closest thing we've seen to like a Japanese BTAC release. Like
Hmm.
it's kind of got a very bourbon-esque profile to me. The wood on this is it's quite spicy. Um, if anyone's wondering about Brennan's Comet specially modified XKWM bottles, he is of course referring to the Berry Brothers and Bud Bongmore that Jeff had made from our 1997 Bowmore cask uh, from Berry Brothers and Red, which was kind of cool. Yeah,
Nice.
quite woody. There's some nutty tones there, nice fruit. I mean, it's a big whiskey though. Like I think that one I would struggle to have more than a couple of glasses of because it's just so big, but it's very elegant. All right. Uh, Should we look at a couple of other random photos from Chichibu Distillery, and then we can move on into the single malts?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So next up, we're still in the distillery. I'll give you a close up here of the stills, and then we'll talk about the back end of the production. Unfortunately, I don't think the press package they shared with me has photos of Chichibu number two in it. And I have yet to visit the second distillery because it wasn't open to the public. So here, why is that not showing me the photo that I want? I think I might have to close a couple here. All right, that's the one I want. So here we go. All right, so very small stills, quite dumpy, quite a slant on the line arm there. Um, I think he's wants a whiskey that's both elegant and well distilled, but at the same time that it retains a nice oiliness. Interestingly, the stills at Chichibu number two, I believe, are direct fired, whereas they're
Yes.
not at Chichibu number one. Although if you read the description of that in the Malt Whiskey Yearbook, it sounds almost like the opposite of that. There's a new washback getting ready for use. There are some funky things. There's a view of the distillery grounds and the mountains behind it, an old condenser, and then this is in the warehouse at Chichibu number one. But I really want to get to a photo. There you can see their disgorgement. A little less uh, automated than it is at some Scotch distilleries, but this is not something that you see very often, these cheesecloths being used to filter out the bits of wood as they're being dumped. These wooden eggs relate to the second whiskey that we tried, the Winewood Reserve. So they're I guess a piece of winemaking technology adopted from the wine industry, in particular in places like Italy, that he's adapted to use to marry the whiskeys for the Winewood Reserve before they go into bottle. And custom made from, and I believe they are also made with Mizunara wood. And there are some spirits. I think those are spirits tanks inside the warehouse or vatting tanks for various different products. The last photos that I want to get to, and I'm sorry, I'm going to skip through here, is there's the old house slash visitor center and some bottles. I'm pretty sure there is a temple. So they don't offer bottles for sale at the distillery. Yeah, these are some of the things that I had a chance to sample when I was there in 2019. All right, I think this is where we get to them. Oh yeah, some Thompson Brothers whiskey that you happen to have in there. Oh, I jumped ahead. This is what I wanted. This is a temple in the village of Chichibu, which is sponsored by the distillery. This is a Shinto temple. And what's really cool when you get up close to it is you'll notice that there's some casks of whiskey built into the design. Oh, they're there somewhere. You'll have to take my word for it. I don't want to waste too much time scrolling through all the photos I took from that last time I was there. Um, Tenure, Evan, you want to pull that one up for us?
Yeah. Yeah. And while I'm doing that, Tom asking what is the slant or angle of the arm effect? I'm guessing he's talking about the line arm there.
Yeah. So the line arm, Tom, if it's got a steep angle on it, that means the spirits, when they get to the top, will fall down. So you'll get some heavier, oilier um, spirit coming off the stills. If the line arm is angled across or up, you're going to get more reflux. So a lot of that distillate, as it's rising in the still, will fall back down and get redistilled because it's harder for it to get up and over a straight or an upward slanting line arm. Whereas a downward slanting line arm, the second it gets up there, it's just going to drift down into the condenser. So in short, a lighter, less oily spirit if it's slanted up, heavier, oily spirit if it's slanted down, generally speaking. So 10-year-olds, this is a bit of a special one because I think they only received about 24 bottles of this for Canada. Um, it's only the second time that they've released a 10-year-old single malt. And we were privileged to get a case of these,
Yeah.
uh, which we, of course, held a bottle back to put into the tasting. Now, Evan, I don't have my glasses on and don't want to trigger a bingo card moment, but are you able to read the details on that from here?
Yeah, so this it says this marks the first time a regular 10-year-old single malt that is not a limited edition age statement is being released by the Chichibu Distillery. Extremely limited qualities globally. Still but a beginning of more age statements to come out of this famous distillery. This primarily bourbon oak aged 10-year-old is first age statement to be released since 2020. Chichibu Distillery is a brainchild of Ichiro Akuto. He's regarded as one of the best master distillers in the world, and his blend creations have been appraised globally for his, or yeah, for his ingenuity and creativity.
Man,
The
this is
distillery has now been operating for 20 years.
just about. Yeah, I thought it was founded
It's 2005.
2007, according to Moment
Oh, okay.
Yearbook.
Yeah,
Production started '08, so we're
yeah.
still a couple years away from 20 years. But I mean, the nose on this is it's soft, it's subtle. Notes,
It kind of shows that like there's as much promise as there is quality to me on the nose so far, where you can see how this is going to be really, really cool when it hits the
yeah.
15-20 year mark.
I mean, the nose to me is like if you had tropical fruits mixed into yogurt, because it's got
Yeah,
this nice, soft, creamy, and I think not the unsweetened yogurt. We're going like yogurt with sugar and fruit mixed into it. It's just lush and yeah, just really, really fruity.
it reminds me of like if you crossed Daft Mill and Ardnamurchan. Like you stripped away some of the more rugged coastal notes of unbeaten Ardnamurchan and replaced them with the softer side of Daft Mill.
Oh man, that is an old school profile whiskey on the palate. It is so soft, so tropical, nice caramel tones. I was going to say this on the nose and then I held back, but it's got this lovely creme brulee, like an Earl Grey tea infused creme brulee note on the nose and palate. This is, man, I wish I had a ball of this. This is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, like again, if this is Chichibu at 10, it's got this combination of rich yet subtle in its approach to things too.
Hmm.
Got bits of pineapple in there,
Yeah.
uh, touches of mango as well.
Yeah. This is very tropical. Only 5,000, not even 4,956 bottles released globally. I mean, that is a tiny, tiny outturn.
Yeah,
And as far as the profile on this, like this doesn't come across like a 10-year-old Scottish. This like by comparison, this is like a
yeah,
25 to 30-year-old in terms of its profile, the elegance that it has. This tastes a lot older than 10 years of age.
it does. Yeah, it's got that cheesiness. It's got like the slightly floral notes that you get in liquid even.
Hmm.
But the just the weight on the palate, the oiliness that comes along with it too is pretty impressive.
Yeah, very cool. Oh, apparently in the local market, this is one of the photos that I didn't I think my thing skipped over it a little bit. Um, but it's looks like they have wine. Uh,
Chichibu?
yeah, I mean maybe they're working with local wineries.
Could
Um,
be.
I'll just share this up on the screen because I was trying to find that photo of the cask, the Chichibu cask at the Shinto shrine in the town of Chichibu, or the city. I guess it's like a small city outside of Tokyo. But there you go, Chichibu wine. So whether it's actually made there or not, I can't say. Um,
Yeah, that could be just referring to
yeah.
where the winery is. Yeah.
Well, and I did try some Japanese wine when I was in Japan and was not really impressed.
Yeah.
I don't think they're a wine drinking country. But anyway.
There's a small amount of stuff that comes into Canada, and we've had some
Mhm.
Japanese wine in the past that actually was quite good, but you definitely pay for what you get.
Yeah. Well, that 10-year-old set a pretty high bar for me here. So,
Mhm.
Evan, do you want to pop Chichibu number two up on the screen here?
Yes.
So this was quite cool. Ichiro opened the second distillery in, I believe it was 2014 or 2015. The first distillation came in 2019. So he started planning it then, opened it 2019. It's 5 times the size of the original Chichibu distillery, but the stills are the same design. His approach is more or less the same, though the one significant thing that we mentioned is there is direct firing of the stills, which is going to give you that slightly more intense flavor coming from the burning of the wash when it goes through that wash still. But in addition to what he was doing at Chichibu, which was a heavily peated and an unpeated malt, at Chichibu number two, he's doing lightly peated, medium peated, heavily peated, and non-peated. So he's
Cool.
working with four different phenol levels in terms of the barley. And this is one of the first releases to come out of this whiskey globally. Again, a small release in terms of volume. And if we think 2019 first production, this is probably 5, 6 year old spirit, but uh, kind of cool to see the different distillery and to see what that approach has to it. Now, Evan, predominantly ex-bourbon is what I'm reading here, 55.5%.
Yeah. Yeah. Mostly ex-bourbon casks. I think I read somewhere, and I could be wrong, Chichibu II, they uses French oak washbacks as well, where they were not
Oh,
French
that's
oak in
right.
the first one. Yeah.
That is right. I did see that as well, so that I can confirm that
Yeah.
detail. So they're not Mizunara where
This
they're French oak.
Yeah, while you're nosing at the whole concept of the different distillates and stuff kind of me reminds me of Springbank, where it's just like you're spreading yourself so thin that you'll never have a regular release.
Hmm.
But it makes everybody seek after everything you do.
Hmm. Well, I'm wondering if we got the ABV wrong on this, if it's supposed to be 55% as opposed to 50.5.
It's
Um,
supposed to be 55.5.
55.5. There you go.
It should say 55.5 on the label. That's what it does say on mine there.
Yeah, you know what, Evan, it does. It's just my,
Yeah.
again, need for glasses and stubbornness not to have actually acquired them thus
Mhm.
far.
So what do you think on the nose on this one? A
You
little
can
bit
tell it's
more.
younger.
Yeah, it's a little bit more like starchy and barley driven than it doesn't have the same fermenting fruits in there.
I was going to say it's much maltier.
Yeah,
Um, and the nose to me on it is like there's more of a granola note to it with
yeah,
there's some fruit, but it's more in that like dried apple chunks, like dried apricots. It's not quite as tropical and exotic.
yeah. And I would say the same on the palate. Like the palate is wonderful. Like it does have some fruit in there. It's a little bit more malt
Mhm.
and spice driven. You can see or you can taste the fruit notes peeking through in between everything.
Yeah.
Um, it's not as lush with the fruit as the 10-year-old is.
There's also a little bit of smoke in there too. So I think
Yeah.
they must have blended
Yeah.
in some lightly peated malt. I don't think this is not even moderately peated. Like this is on the lightly peated side of things for sure. What's interesting though is I can see a bit of a synergy between the two distilleries on the palate. They both are doughy. They both have this soft old school feel to them. Like this is the way
Mhm.
like the way whiskey used to be made in Scotland back before everybody started using distiller's yeast with shorter fermentations. There's a mouth feel to this that's quite nice, and that little touch of smoke in there. So I can see the parallel between the two. There's definitely some similarities, but it's
Yeah.
not the same. I suppose the challenge though is that we're comparing a 10-year-old to something that's probably half the age.
Yeah. 4 to 5
It's
years old, maybe.
yeah, so it's kind of hard to compare apples to apples.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, that peat note I didn't even pick up on originally. That's a good call. And it reminds me a little bit of like it's not as heavy, but
Hmm.
of the peat that you get from Yoichi.
Hmm.
And even somewhat from Highland Park sometimes, where it's got that spiciness to it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
One of the comments I saw online for this is hilarious. Um, Described as high tech by compared to Chichibu, because the washback at Chichibu had to be stirred with a paddle. So there's not even a lauter that goes around the inside of it. It's a manual hand stirred washback, whereas at Chichibu number two, they have a more modern one. And the guy was joking that he could taste the high tech and the spirit. It
Nice.
I think the interesting thing is that he's got something that's similar in terms of his ethos and style, but
Hmm.
definitely a little bit distinct. And as far as the fruitiness goes, like I would expect that in 10 years' time, sorry, 5 years longer than this matured,
Hmm.
we would see some more exotic fruit profile in the spirit. But
Yeah.
at 5 years of age, it shows a ton of promise and yeah, cheesy, fruity, funky with just a little bit of smoke.
Again, kind of reminding me of Ardnamurchan, where you can see the promise there, and it's unlike a lot of other new make distillate or even young distillate that we've seen from other distilleries, where
Hmm.
it's still making some like a really approachable whiskey at this point. It's not like you don't get those like heavy chemical notes to it that
Hmm.
a lot of whiskeys give you at this age.
Hmm. Well, you know, I I thought that I thought that one of the whiskeys earlier on in this lineup was running away with the tasting, but I was clearly wrong. I think this is really um, both this and the 10-year-old have really shown well in this particular release. I think they're quite cool.
Well,
And I
shall we
actually,
go on to?
well, we should, but before we do, I actually have
Mhm.
some photos of Ichiro in his more modern distillery. Since we're on number two, before we leave it, there's Ichiro with the mash tun in his new distillery, Chichibu number two. There are the French oak washbacks that he's using, which are much larger than the Mizunara ones from Chichibu number one, and a shot in the cooperage. So in addition to having the two distilleries, which are only a couple minutes drive apart, he's also got his own cooperage, which is quite cool. Um, yeah, fascinating little place. I don't know if Chichibu number two is open to the public. I hope so, because if I ever get back to Japan, I would love to pay it a visit.
Mhm.
Final whiskey, Evan, before we do our speed rounds.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
Alberta
well, I
Cask.
bring it up. I gotta say, I love how, like, in pretty much every shot I've seen of Ichiro, he's in a t-shirt and jeans. He just comes off as a guy that you'd meet, like, in a pachinko lounge, smoking cigarettes one after another,
Yeah.
uh, in the way it looks.
Yeah, I can't comment on the cigarette part of it, but yeah, he's a very genuine, down to earth guy. Um, I don't think he likes the limelight. I don't think he likes getting
Mhm.
trotted around the world to pour his whiskey. Um, but yeah. Jason asked, did you say that was a churro at Chichibu one or two? That was at distillery number two. Distillery number one does not have a mash tun. It's got an open top wooden mash tun, or maybe not be wooden, but it's open top and it has to be stirred with a paddle. And I've only ever been to Chichibu number one. I've been there twice, but I've yet to visit number two. Uh, all right, Evan, what can you tell us about the Alberta cask of Ichiro single malt cask 14,200?
Yeah, so this is at a level that's going into Alberta premium cask strength territory at 64.6% alcohol, which is very cool. Product description reads, the first ever Chichibu single malt or single cask is exclusive to Alberta, or that is exclusive to Alberta. Distilled in 2016 and aged in sherry hogshead cask, bottled in June 2025, makes this almost a 10-year-old whiskey. The cask is from the original Chichibu distillery, and then the typical Chichibu fluff after that.
just some fluff, eh?
Yeah.
And we're looking at first fill sherry hogshead this time, 9 years of age, 64.6%, as you've said. So
Mhm.
a big whiskey.
It has, along with those sherry notes, it does have like a slight soapiness to it for me.
Yeah. I mean, the sherry notes on this are quite clean, like lots of like
Mhm.
dark fruits, cooked raisins, some nice chocolate, maybe even like a classic kind of Christmas cake note to it as well.
Yeah. David says definite cherry notes. I'm right there with you. Almost along with that soapy note, going into like a little bit of a eucalyptus Halls cherry note.
Hmm. Yeah, I see that. The cherry halls is a good call.
Yeah. Just a touch of like peppermint schnapps,
Hmm.
almost in the background there too. Mm.
It's big, it's
Yeah.
rich.
Big sherry. Still has a touch of that soapy note for me, and not in a bad way.
Well, I think the soapiness, Evan, for me is a lavender. It's like a Thrills
Yeah.
gum note. Um,
Yeah.
except
Yeah.
the flavor doesn't die. It just keeps going.
Yeah.
Um,
Like thrills gum.
like, well, no, the flavor in Thrills gum dies really quickly. And
Hmm.
then all you get is whatever the chemicals are that it's made of. So for me, like brown sugar, leather, a little bit of chocolate, tobacco, it's really in that Christmas cake realm. But I think that
Yeah.
uh, lavender note, maybe a lavender creme brulee on the palate this time.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of fig notes in there, but still showing as because of the ABV, probably as much as anything else. Also a little bit tightly wound on the nose.
It's getting kind of tropical too on the palate. The more you get into the finish, get these nice juicy
Yeah.
pineapple mango notes and the spices, leaning into that sweet wood spice, like your cinnamon, fennel, licorice, like cinnamon sticks. There's a lot of nice spice tones in there too.
Agreed. And the mango note, I think, is good. If you've had I think TNT carries them, the dried mango with honey
Oh,
on it, or dipped in honey. It's got some similar notes in there, getting into the pineapple again as well.
I
Pineapple on a Hawaiian pizza almost.
Well, now you've lost me, Evan, as I'm sure you're aware. As
Yeah.
I firmly believe pineapple has no place on pizza. Um, I will say this, the one and only reason I go to TNT Market is for the microwavable barbecue pork buns that you can heat up
Nice.
at home in the microwave and enjoy a dim sum like pork bun in your own home. Uh, yeah, this has been a great lineup so far. I'm interested
Yeah.
to go back through and see how these have changed. So let's go back to the Mizunara wood.
Yeah.
All right, Brennan, I'll try the
Whoa.
frozen scallion pancakes.
Um,
Oh
all of a
man,
sudden I'm getting a Pete on the nose on this one now.
you're getting Pete?
Yeah.
I don't know. This is like a peanut, not the fresh peanut butter parfait from Dairy Queen, but the like Buster bars that you can take home and enjoy from your freezer.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Chocolate,
could see that.
vanilla soft serve, peanuts. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. It has that peanuttiness on that palate as well. Um, more toasty than smoky on the palate again for me.
mhm. It's a good starting dram. Nice fruits, a
Yeah.
little bit of spice, nice balance. It's still got that like chocolate sauce, Dairy Queen chocolate sauce, and a bit of soft serve.
On to what is potentially the speed bump in the tasting lineup.
Oh man, there's just so much catheter on that. I knew I knew someone would love that one. It's so rubbery. There's so much
Yeah.
latex and rubber there.
It's like it's gone into the like a touch of burnt circuit board
Yeah.
in there as well on the nose.
What about like rusting, like a rusty car, gasoline?
Yeah.
Again, the palate's it's not my taste. It's not bad. It's got a bit of a meatiness to it. Um,
Hmm.
the noses on that has got some stank though.
Yeah. Yeah, it's maybe I've just been too influenced by you and Sean and Kurt in my ears, but I agree. It again, it's just not what I'm looking for, and I'm glad the rest of the lineup is not like this.
Yeah. Uh, Now, having said that, Evan, we are business folk, despite the
Yep.
way we carry ourselves, and
Yep.
we do need this to sell because we have to buy this to get the other ones too. So
Hmm.
if you like it, don't be afraid to buy it.
Yep. There's a link for you.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I think that's the only one in tonight's lineup that's actually available for purchase.
Yeah, I think so.
Everything else was either sold by ballot or when they came out. I know there was a question about prices. We will come to that at the end, so be
Hmm.
patient. We're back to my favorite from the first three, and I have to say this is still my favorite, and I haven't even tasted it yet.
Oh, it's gone from yuzu to kiwi on the nose for me.
Well, it's just so elegant. Yeah, decadent, creamy, uh, lots of exotic fruit. It's soft, it's balanced, it's very, very drinkable. Like this is a dangerously drinkable whiskey. Ah. Well, Tom, I'm glad you liked that quote. Uh, maybe that'll be a t-shirt. That
Yeah.
should also be a bingo square, Evan.
Yeah.
Promises of apparel that never come through.
It actually kind of reminds me of about 6 or 7 years ago now, we had a PR firm that we worked with that attempted to get us to work in a calm and timely fashion, and I don't think it really worked on both on either side. But one of the first things we got was a business kit with it, where you're trying to make up the motto and your your sort of byline for the store. And I don't think we ever came up with one, but I think that should be it. Is we're a business folk despite how we carry ourselves.
Well, that's what I'm saying, Evan. Save that
Yep,
quote. Maybe we'll put it on a t-shirt.
that's right.
Uh, I'm before that disappears and before I forget, I might just take a photo of that comment if I can get my stupid phone to work. Um, yeah, I really like this one. I think it's very elegant. It's my jam. So
Mhm.
I'm on to the Malt and Grain limited edition World Blend,
Yep.
which again has a bit of a Dairy Queen soft serve note to it. Maybe just a
Yeah.
chocolate dip this time.
Yeah, it's gone to the point. Ovaltine is a great note. There's a touch of spice, but there's just no rough edges to this. Like this is just the smooth and crushable side of whiskey, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, minimum 10 years of age in Japan, which, as I've said before, like if you do the math on that in terms of maturation time, climate, it's really more like 20 something years of age and style. It's elegant, very easy drinking. You know, this is a whiskey that I think John Glazer would put a big ice cube in on a hot day
Yeah,
and sit
in a
on his
giant wine
patio.
glass.
Yeah,
Yep.
in a giant wine glass and just sip.
Yep.
Lovely, lovely. Okay. What about the Malton Grain?
The 60
Uh,
percenter.
yeah, the 20-year-old,
Mhm.
I believe we learned. Very spicy. Again, and I mean this as a compliment. This is the best of like old and expensive bourbon to me on the nose.
Yep. Yeah, it's got notes that remind me of like the 4-year-old Canadian clubs to it. Probably again going into corn for the grain side of things. Still has that freshness to it and this light woody note that comes through.
I'm even
Um,
getting a bit of like of like a rye spice, like a German spelt bread note on the
yeah,
palate.
yeah, a little bit of peaches and cream in there, some big golden pear notes.
Yeah.
Um, I do quite like that one.
Yeah. I it's good to me for my taste, and I think we nailed it. We kind of touched on this already. I think it's a touch woody, but it's
Yeah.
very good. Uh
Mhm.
Ichiro's
A
Malt
10.
10 year. Oh man, this is what I want.
I just without putting my thumb on the scales, I don't know how this won't get number one when we do the
Yeah.
vote.
Um this is now more like a banana split or bananas Foster on the nose.
Yeah, same with the palate. Um, I wish I had more of it.
That is so old school on the palate. Yeah, that's crazy good. Crazy
Yeah.
good.
And
Agreed.
it just like the weight of it on the palate for being ex-bourbon is just so impressive. Again,
Well,
reminds me of Ardmarken in a good way.
well, and I think that's going back to that. It's a whiskey that's made with a focus on fermentation. It's an
Yeah,
old school style, traditional whiskey, not a modern commercialized or
yep,
commercial homogenized whiskey
yeah,
style. This is like
absolutely.
going back to the roots of how whiskey used to be made as a product where people like, were doing things the old way with care and with precision.
Yep.
Um, uh,
It's even the along those lines, it's the difference between having like a Molson Canadian or a Kokanee and then having any craft beer, like a lager or a pilsner or whatever,
mhm,
where you just get the weight of the malt after that.
yeah. Uh, Chichibu number two now. I
Mhm.
think the smoke is more prominent there. Now, Evan, when we went around this the first time, I didn't pick up the smoke until the palate,
Yeah,
but
yeah, and you picked it up well before I did.
but I get it now. It's still very light, very
Yeah,
soft,
it
but
really mingles well with that sort of fermenty, sort of like long times and washback side of things.
mhm. Ben's saying it smells like ginkgo. I got to remind myself, is ginkgo that stuff that they put shavings of on what is that thing that they put on top of takoyaki? They do like thin slices of that stuff that looks like it moves. Do you know what I'm talking about?
You lost
Yeah.
me.
Bonito. That's bonito. Jason says that's
Mm.
bonito. Okay. Because I was going to say, like, that's what it smells like to me is that thing that they put on top of takoyaki, which is deep fried
Maybe that's
octopus balls.
that could be another uh, bingo card spot is one of the KWM staff butchers the pronunciation of a foreign term.
I'm pretty sure I pronounced takoyaki right.
Isn't it teppanyaki? Or are we
No,
thinking of two
no,
different things?
that's two different things. Takoyaki is deep fried octopus balls, and they're like a street
Ah,
food in Japan.
nice.
And you can get them here from places. They're as long as you're not morally opposed to the idea of eating an intelligent creature, they're delicious. Um, but I get I get slightly less guilted about that by my wife than I do for foie gras. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah,
But still
that's just
guilted,
because yeah, because they look gross. That's why.
I guess. Oh man. Yeah, that Chichibu number
This one,
two is
it's
a
opened
great
up.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gotten more going on now that it's set in the glass a bit.
The interesting thing is it's got a bit of a Springbank feel to it on the palate. And I think
Totally.
that's the combination of the direct fire, because I believe Springbank still direct fires with natural gas. I could be wrong about that. I should probably double check that. Um, but yeah, just that nice textural mouth feel to it. It's not as mature as the 10, but it really shows well.
Yeah. Yeah, Yeah, it just has that, along with the Springbank taste, just that slight note of never planning on selling out, that goes along with it too.
All right, the last one.
Hmm.
And Evan, I was not wrong. Springbank does still direct fire. So
Nice.
there we go. But I think that's the difference is that direct firing. I did a tasting with a rep last week where he wanted me to pick a cask, and one he didn't want me to tell me what they were. He wanted me to try them first, and then he would tell me what they were and what they cost. And he's like, one of these you'll probably guess. It's not easy, but you'll probably guess. And eventually I got to it, and it was Glenfarclas, and it was because of the direct firing and the effect that has on the palate.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
there's so few distilleries in Scotland where they still do that. So when you see that,
Yeah.
it's one of those things that you can occasionally pick out.
Cool.
Uh,
So the nose on this one is really it's opening up as well. It's got this like aged Parmesan or even into an Asiago cheese note for me right now.
this is all Forrest Gump on the notes for me.
Yeah.
The
It's
nose.
it's got a touch of like a really good Alfredo sauce on as well.
So for me, it's a box of chocolates. There's just all
Nice.
kinds of different chocolates, assorted chocolates in a box here on the nose.
Just that burst of fruit right up front. The soapiness that I was getting on the first round has kind of stepped into the background.
Man, it's big. It's a contender for me. I might need a minute. I might need to go through and actually have another minute to like. I've narrowed it down to five, Evan.
Yeah.
I mean that. I know Tom said this on the first time around. I think like this is a great lineup tonight. I mean, there's a lot of really
Yeah.
cool, really interesting whiskeys in this.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. It is a
Um,
fantastic lineup. This is the most Chichibu I've ever had. Not just at one tasting, but overall. Like this easily tripled the amount of Chichibu I've tasted in my life.
mhm,
Um, and I've been happy to be here for it because it is a pretty fantastic lineup. I can see why uh, Ichiro's gotten the accolades he has.
mhm. Oh man. Well, I think we should fire up the poll.
Yeah,
While we're doing that, partly to buy myself some time. So the poll is up if you want to put your favorites in there. Walter asked me to remind all of you that his whiskey is nearly sold out. I think we're now down to less than 30 bottles as of today. And you have until midnight on Saturday to buy it before the price goes up, if there's any left. So there you go, Walter's Choice. It's been a big hit. If you haven't had a chance to try this yet, I suppose I'm sorry, but I think we've put it in enough tastings, Evan. We've even trotted
yeah.
it.
We have not been cheap in allowing people to try this.
No, we've trotted it around to tastings in different markets. It's been around the block. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if
We've
you're,
we've we've talked about this dog so much you'd think it was a rescue.
but it is going up in price February 1, if there's any left. And if there's not, great. I mean, truly, I'd be happy for them all to sell at the current price. But Evan, I think we learned a lesson a number of years ago about pricing, and part of that
Yeah.
is if you say you're going to do something, you got to do it because people have been holding out. I know people have been holding out because they think it's going to go on sale. It's not. We said it never
Uh,
would, and it hasn't.
Jeff Serja, I think, has only purchased one case in the hopes that it would sell. It would go on sale.
Evan, we don't disclose details like that.
True.
Plus, he has a new girlfriend. We don't want to get him in trouble.
Oh, that's a fair point.
Yeah. All right. I think I'm nearly there. Evan, where are you at? Do you know your three favorites from tonight?
I can totally make something up on the spot. Uh, it is a tough lineup. to make that kind of decision on, but I am going to stick with, one thing did change after that second round. So I am going to give Chichibu II my third favorite spot.
Okay.
Um, it's with time in the glass, I think it got a lot more fun, a lot more expressive. That's really cool to see. I don't really care if it's the same distillate or not as Chichibu One. I'm not looking for that if there's a second distillery, so I'm just happy to see what else there is. So that was very cool. Second favorite is the because of my bourbon tooth, as Andrew calls it, the Cheerios Malt and Grain single cask for Alberta at 60% alcohol. I think that is a crazy good blend, if that's what we want to call it, since it is that. And it's hard not to pick Chichibu 10-year-old as my number one. That is just a killer dram. Just the weight of everything, the complexity at 10 years. Again, I shudder to think what the pricing will be when it gets more older,
Yeah.
but I want to try it when it gets older as well. Andrew.
Yeah. All right. So my favorites are somewhat similar. So my number one, I will go in top to bottom instead of bottom to top. My number one is the 10-year. I love the profile. I think it's beautiful. My number two is the Ichiro's Double Distilleries, the Hanyu Chichibu blend. I just love how elegant that is.
Cool.
I think that little touch of Hanyu is just adding a little bit of age and elegance to it, which was great. And then Evan, I'm with you on the Chichibu number two. That was my third favorite.
Cool.
Going into tonight's tasting, I thought the two single casks would be in my top three, and they're
Yeah.
both good. And I think this is we talked about this in some tastings about how, our preference is generally cask strength over 46, certainly
Yep.
over 40 or 43. But that's not always the best drinking strength for things. And you look at Decadent Drams, Angus McRailed, a lot of what he does is either cast strength or he'll vat it down to a strength that he feels it drinks well at. I know Boutique had that approach to their whiskeys. Maybe this is me maturing and getting a little older, but there's something to me about um, ABVs that are a little closer to 50 that make them more drinkable. So as much as I liked that Ichiro's Malt Chichibu Alberta cask at 64.6% for me. It's too spicy and it's just too big. I think the 10-year and the number two are just so much more elegant. And that one blended malt, the double distilleries, I think highly
Yeah.
underrated. Um, you know, Far less expensive than most of the other whiskeys in tonight's lineup, and yet it still kind of performed really well. Uh, Before we call
Mhm.
the end of the votes, because one of you still has to vote, there were questions about pricing, so I can share that quickly because I've still got it from when we release these. Now, keep in mind, we only have one of them available for purchase, and that's the Winewood. Very likely we'll see some of these again in the future. But in order that we sampled them, the Mizunara wood was 140. The Winewood was also 140. The double distillers was also 140. The Malt and Grain limited edition, which was number four, was 170. The single cask Malt and Grain was 285 for a roughly 20-year-old whiskey. The Ichiro's Malt 10-year-old, which was only available in, I think, to one store in Alberta and one in BC, was 295. The Chichibu number two was 176, a bit of a steal compared to some of those other ones. And
Mhm.
the Alberta cask Chichibu was 275. Sadly, none of these are available, except for the one that I mentioned earlier. But I hope we'll see another release of these this year,
Yeah.
and that this isn't going to just be like a once a year scenario. Evan, are you ready to call the poll here?
Yeah, let's do that. And then remind me at the end and because someone asked what's going on with Chichibu this year. I'll talk about the green distillery before we
All right.
tap it.
So, favorite whiskey of the night. I think it's a runaway show for the Chichibu 10-year-old.
Yeah,
And then, interestingly, the Malt and Grain cask finished second,
cool.
with Chichibu number two and the Alberta cask finishing tied for third. Second favorite whiskey of the night, Chichibu, the Alberta cask, leading Chichibu number two. And then in third place, Double Distillers. So, interesting results there. Now, Evan, do you want to take us through your cheeky or not so cheeky third question?
Yeah, yeah. So the third question was pretty straightforward, just because my sense of humor, I think, is still revving up for 2026. Japanese whiskey, will this concept take off? And only getting one vote was no true Scotsman will ever enjoy whiskey from outside of Scotland. It's not like Japan has a history of improving concepts and technology they adopted from other nations to the point where they become the standard of quality or anything. And then the winner was number two, which is, I think this has a chance. Give them a century or so and let the market decide. Who knows? Maybe they'll win an award or two along the way.
Evan, the joke to that, for those who don't know, is that
Yep.
they've been making whiskey for a century now. So,
And
um,
they won an award or two along the way.
yeah, they have. You know, Evan, that reminds me of a funny story that I love to tell about Cavalan. And the first
Yeah.
time I poured Cavalan in the store, and it was the Vino, the wine cask, the blue one. And I had a room of, and it was all men on this one night. There might have been one lady in the room. It was probably Dr. Jane. Other than that, it was like 20 odd men and Dr. Jane. And I poured a range of big old sherry bombs, most of them 20 years of age or older. And I didn't tell them what Cavalan was, that Cavalan was in the range. In fact, I think it was a completely blind tasting. I didn't tell them how old anything
Nice.
was. I didn't tell them, what region it was from or anything. And at the end of the tasting, we had a vote. And the Cavalan was everybody's first favorite whiskey, except for two guys. And they all picked it as their second favorite. So it was without
Nice.
question, absolutely like the rock star, the winner of that particular tasting and all the votes. And there was one table of four gentlemen. Three of them were Scottish, one of them was English, based on their accents. And I'm going from memory here. They weren't surprised. They were angry. They thought I was fooling.
Yeah.
They thought that surely this was some kind of trickery, that there's no way a Taiwanese whiskey would outperform whiskeys from Scotland, let alone a Taiwanese whiskey that was a quarter the age of everything else in the
Mhm.
lineup. And that was kind of a revelatory moment for me, just to see the effect that has. I would love to put, if we had enough stock, some of these blindly into a tasting with Scotch whiskies to see how they do. The sad
Yep.
reality is we just don't get enough of it, and it might be a
Absolutely.
while until we do.
Yeah, and there were parts of me that I almost did a reference to the 76 Judgment of Paris in one of the things. 76 Judgment of Paris is a famous wine thing where there was a wine competition in Paris. And I think it was 1976, if I remember correctly, that it was a bunch of Bordeaux and Burgundies put up against Napa Valley, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Chardonnay. And the Napa Valley cabs and shards actually uh, did quite well in the lineup in the blind tasting with the fish like some highfalutin French wine judges, and it kind of quickly created this shift in the idea that you can only make wine in the old world and have it
Mhm.
be fantastic. And it was sort of like the slow opening up of the new world that started from that. We've definitely seen that with whiskey. I mean, especially in the last 20 years, where all of us would have turned up our nose, or probably did turn up our noses at Amrut Distillery and Cavalan Distillery and so on and so forth. That's definitely not the case today. I think a lot of us, or most of us, are more than well aware that you can make great single malt whiskey in a lot of different places, including Canada.
Yeah, I think the only challenge to that perspective, Evan, is
Price?
well, there's that, but is that enough? You know,
Yep.
the world's so oversaturated with so many producers that, like, you can make a world-class whiskey anywhere in the world, but is someone going to buy it? And I
Yeah.
think that's the rub they're going to have. The difference is that you still have a handful of distillers around the world. Springbank is a good example, and I think Ichiro and Chichibu are another, where
Hmm.
there's almost never going to be enough supply to meet demand. And so as long as there's a market, those guys are going to be fine because they don't make
Yeah.
enough to ever have enough to supply everybody. So they're never going to get to the point where there's enough to satisfy demand. And that's, I suppose, how you run a business. You want to, and Evan, this might be a good moment for us to sign off on, is to
Yeah,
say that you want to leave them always wanting more.
absolutely. Yeah, so tune in for our next Chichibu tasting, and then we'll talk about the grain distillery that he's opening up.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Well,
Yeah,
listen, Evan, thanks for joining me tonight. That was a fun lineup. Thank you, everybody, for tuning
yeah.
in. As Tom said, this is our first virtual of the year, I believe.
On
Um,
Scotch Malt Whiskey Society virtual,
okay,
yes.
other than the Scotch, but other than that, it's our first virtual tasting of the year. More to come. So we'll see you guys again in the future. I hope you all have a great night. Thanks for tuning in. Talk again soon.